Shut up and sit down.
Hello guys, it's Andy from Big Mac's Workshop and Painting Studio, and today I am painting a Kustom Boosta-Blasta from the new Speed Freaks kit. So as always, we've got a black metallic, black prime on the model, and I'm starting off with the vehicle in sub-assembly, getting the engine sections done with a metallic black by Vallejo, and I'm getting a good coat on this. I'm doing this nice and simple and easy. Now obviously, as always, you can always do this by hand. It's just easier for us to do it with an airbrush, and if any of the techniques we use are also backwards compatible by hand or rattle can as well. So once the black metallic is set, we're going from a sort of a 45-degree angle with oily steel, picking out those early highlights, getting a nice shiny base to the engine sections. Now, as you can see, I've built the engine sections largely together. Now this is a bit of a regret of mine. I should have left them in a slightly less estate, leaving the exhaust off would have made life a little bit easier, but these are mistakes what I'm going to realise in hindsight. Once I've got the oily steel down, it is then a chrome from Vallejo, and that is coming from around about 90 degrees, maybe slightly less. So just picking out the extreme highlights on the engines, making that highlighting system look really vibrant and get a real colourful, bright silver on that engine work, making it look really interesting. Once that's down, it's good old-fashioned non-oil, getting this all over the model, getting it everywhere. This is slightly thinned down. I've used a bit of flow aid in there just to make it run a little bit better, and I'm just layering it up, getting plenty of the wash down. I'm probably using about 2 layers of wash on this particular section, making sure I've got plenty of depth to the silver work, bringing out all those cool, interesting sections. And I'm doing I've done exactly the same on the internal mechanisms as well. So whilst I'm leaving that to dry, it is dark rust. So I'm going back to the old chipping fluid techniques, what we've done in some of our earlier videos. It's been a while since we've done that, and so it's dark rust by Vallejo's game model colour as a overall base underneath all the paintwork. So you always paint this backwards. You start off with the rusted colours first, and then you paint over the top of that. So next is light rust, picking out areas around the model, not going over too much of a dark rust. You want a bit of a mismatched pattern. You're not really thinking about how the light would hit it, etc. You want just loads of different patches of different colours, making a model look really interesting when you start taking the chips off. And then it's yellow rust, again by model colour, just as a final highlight. I say highlight, just a different shade of rust, making it look a bit more interesting when you start taking the colour off. So you get when the top coats come down, you really start to get interesting looks from the chips. I'm also doing it in the behind the engine sections as well. So if I do get to take some of the paint off, I get it behind there as well. So you get it all over. So once I've done that, it's important to get a varnish down to protect the paint. So once you start pulling the paint off again, you don't want to go too far. And then you use the AK Interactive chipping fluid straight over the top of that. You don't need to thin it down, it can go straight through the airbrush. You just need to give it a good clean after. So you want a couple of coats of that before you go down, before you start to work on the next colours. So now I'm doing a light dry brush on the upper sections of the engines with Vallejo game colour silver, which is a really vibrant colour. And yes, I do not like dry brushing a lot. So this is unusual for me because I don't do much in the way of dry brush work. So yeah, that was just as a final highlight on the silver work. So once I've got that down, and the shipping fluids are time to dry, as are the varnishes, it is Mephiston Red by GW. I'm getting a really good quality coat on this. I wanted to do something a lot brighter than my normal reds. I've not done anything this sort of style of brightness for a hell of a long time, and I do need to practice my reds a little bit more because I tend to struggle with them a little bit. So once I've got the Mephiston Red down, it's Evil Sunz Scarlet, and I'm coming from about 45 degrees, getting a nice rich highlight, making sure some of the darker colours are showing up as well, so you get a nice bit of colour depth. As you can see, starting to get a real vibrant sort of orky red now from them upper sections. After that, it is Wild Rider Red, again another GW colour, and that is just again from the uppermost highlights, really making that them colours really pop out, so you get a real vibrant model that was really appropriate to Evil Sunz. I was really looking forward to painting this, as I've got a bit of a soft spot for Evil Sunz, always have had. So painting this as a classic Evil Sunz Speed Freak vehicle was a huge draw for me. So once I'd got the highlights in, I decided to go back in with a shade colour now, which is German Red Brown, which we normally use as a first layer. So I'm coming in from about 45 degrees from below and bringing a bit of depth to the model. So what you get is a really nice transition between the low sections and the high sections. Really brings that model together and makes it a little extra interesting. So now on the boots and the leather work is Rhinox Hide. Again, another GW paint. A couple of thin layers. You don't need to work too much on the interior of the vehicle because the section's got a roof and loads of interesting details on the outside, so you don't need to be go over the top on the inside of the cab. It's very difficult to see a lot of it. Back onto the engine then, and it is a bit of black into the fan belt, just making it look like it's all separate from the rest of the thing, getting some extra detail into the engine sections, really making it look more working, so it's something that would actually start to drive. It's not just a solid lump of steel at this point. I've also done a bit of blacking out around all the detail work just to get it a baseline for all the extra details, so I can actually start painting something with a unified start point. So the next is Model Metal's Rust, which is a nice deep copper colour, really good coverage as well. You do need to thin it down a little bit more than normal because it's a Vallejo model paint, so it is quite thick, but you do get a really rich coppery colour, and that is going over all of the sort of external metal work, getting a nice coverage over that. I've also done the same on some of the sections off engine as well, just to break that silver up. So on the strapping, it is Shabty Bone, which is just a couple of thin layers over some of the strapping, like bandages and things, look like the sort of thing what's holding the model together. So I've just thrown that across the entire, all of the strapping, and then I've thrown an Agrax over both. So the next layer is Psychotic Bronze over the metal framework again, and getting a nice good layer, and it really does work well with the coppery colour. It really just lightens it up a bit and makes it look a lot more vibrant and much more interesting to see. So once you've got a decent layer of that down, you then go over with Agrax Earthshade over all the strapping and all of the metalwork at the same time. So it just saves you doing the extra layers. Obviously, again, this has been thinned down with a bit of flow aid, so it moves around better, and it just allows you to get a little bit extra control over the wash. So next is Screaming Skull going onto the bandage straps, and just to add that nice bit of highlight to it, and it also takes away some of the scruffiness of the wash. So if you do a general wash, it can look scruffy, so you do need to sometimes go back to it. And just picked it out with a nice crisp highlights on the upper sections of the bandages, around the piping and around the metal framework as well. Just to add a little bit of colour variation to it. So once the Screaming Skull's down, back onto the metalwork with gold. Again, another army painter colour this time. Very, very thin paint, so you don't need to thin it down so much, as it does tend to separate when mixed with thinners or water. You just keep it gentle, and you get a nice rich golden colour over the top of your Psychorax, but you don't want too much of it. Obviously you don't want to clog up the detail. So onto the orcs now, and the base layer for the orcs is Kustom Green. I wanted to do something a little bit different to the colours we've been using up to now. I also wanted to do a little bit old school and keep the orcs darker than the Gretchen. So I've gone for different colour schemes on the orc and Gretchen flesh. So this is Kustom Green by GW. I'm getting a good couple of layers on it, all over the model, just to make sure I am covering all the detail up. The next layer is Deathworld Forest. Focus it very, very thin, focus towards obviously the upper areas. I'm getting nice highlights all over the model. You want to obviously look at the muscle texture and really focus your sections towards there. Now, orcs aren't my strong point when it comes to painting the flesh. That's more of a dodge thing. I've not painted any orcs. I think I've only ever painted one. I was on a tutorial a couple of months back, and yeah. So this I was trying a lot of new colours for me, and I'm just experimenting with the model. But I think it came out okay in the end. The next layer is Elysian Green. Again, focusing towards the centre of the highlighted areas and bringing out those muscle tones. Really exaggerating the sort of ape-like muscle structure that the orcs got. And then it is Green Camo for the final highlight all over the model, picking out the extra detail around it. And it really does give you a sort of a very more natural green colour than the classic GW Goblin Green sort of colours. It looks a bit more feasible, in my opinion, less cartoony than the GW colour spectrums for their classic orc range. So I've thrown a bit of Euphonian camo shade into the model as well, and this is just to add a little bit of depth to the model, blend in some of those extra highlights what I've mixed in, and just to tie the model together. And then it is Green Camo as a top highlight again, and it just really brightens up those muscles and around the facial features to really make them stand out. After that we go to Gunmetal. So I've got a different silver palette on the bionic sections of the orc. And if you notice, he's got a his surgically removed left hand. It's now actually just a gear stick. Obviously his spinal cord and his jaw. That's all start off with Gunmetal, get a nice vibrant silver, but it's not the same as the engine sections of the model as well. I do exactly the same onto the gunner, and now it is XV88 to paint his teeth. You get a nice baseline colour for the teeth to really make his teeth look interesting and really stand out against the rest of the flesh. So now what I've got is very thin paint of Demonette hide. I'm going around all of the sections where he would be sore, you know, like around a section of his spinal cord, around all his bionic work, make it look as if it's fairly fresh or unhealed properly. Make the wounds feel look a lot more unpleasant than they possibly are. Make it look a bit more interesting as well. It brightens up the colour scheme of the skin and just adds a little bit of interesting shades to it. Then I've thrown a bit of Caribou Crimson into the mix as well, just to build up sort of the obvious soreness around the stitches and around the bionic work. Make them look that bit more interesting. Adds a little bit of character to the quite clearly unpleasant surgical procedures he's had. Onto the bionic work again, null oil over the straight silvers. Obviously it gives you a lot of nice bit of depth into the model, just to get some life into the bionics, makes them look that bit more vibrant as well. And this is Dead Flesh by Vallejo, so I'm using that as the next layer for his teeth. I found it actually came out quite well. I was just playing around with different colours, and the Dead Flesh goes really well over the XV88. Makes his teeth look sort of unclean, for want of a better term. Clearly doesn't not going to brush his teeth a hell of a lot, so his teeth look healthy, but a little bit on the dirty side. Macragge Blue is going into all the dials around the gun. Now it's only one layer. I decided not to put too many layers into the sections of the vehicle around the speed dials, etc., as you just can't see them very well. So we just needed to be a colour of what you could actually see from a distance rather than going over the top with highlights. Onto the clothes then of the Orc, and this is Heavy Khaki by Vallejo. A couple of good layers on that. It's an extra opaque colour, so you get a real good mix. I'm getting that all over the all over the Orc's trousers. Get you a nice sort of brownish colour, what really works well with the brightness of the vehicle, but isn't too overpowering. I needed something a little bit cooler against the warm reds. Once that's set, an Agrax event khaki straight over the top as a couple of thin layers of khaki. It really starts to bring out those shades. And you get a nice colour against the warm reds of the rest of the vehicle. Once the khaki's set, a couple of thin layers of Dead Flesh, just to add extra highlights to the model. It really starts to bring out the texture of the camo, sort of the khaki coloured clothes. Now obviously this is the driver. You don't need to go over the top with this, as you can't really see his legs when he's sat down. But I do exactly the same thing with the goblins as well. So the goblin skin, as I said earlier, I wanted them a little bit lighter than the Orcs. So I'll start off with Straken Green. Again, another Games Workshop paint. A couple of thin layers of that, and it gets a really a much lighter shade of green than the Orcs are. Once the Straken Green's down, it is then Nurgling Green. Now what I did notice was not only are they hard to hold, but because they're so pointy, they chip very easily. So probably worth thinking to throw throw a varnish over the models about once you've got the second layer of paint down, just to protect the paintwork. Once the first highlights are dried, and then go for a few very very precise sections of shading with a phonio camo shade. I went for this over BL Tan because it's a much browner green, so you get a much more natural colour to it, which is what I was going for with the orcs and the goblins. Then back to Nurgling Green to clean up any of the areas where I'd overdone it with the washes, and also just to brighten things up a bit. That second layer of the Nurgling Green really adds a little bit of lightness to the model before I do a final highlight. And the final highlights with the goblins is Ogryn Camo again. So I'm going for the same sort of top colour on the, as on the orcs. There's still that sort of yellowy browny green colour, but as it's got such a much lighter base, you do get a visibly different shade of green between the two figures. So onto the spikes, tusks should I say, of the vehicle, and that is a Mornfang Brown. I've just gone for a nice reddy brown colour, as I'm going to go up to a proper bone with this, just to finally make those spikes look really interesting. So next is XV88, and as you can see, I'm starting to throw a few lines in. I'm not being over the top with this. I'm not trying to go for a particularly lined look. I'm just flicking up in a sort of a parallel line to each other. It just adds a little bit of detail to the tusks, making it look a bit more interesting. So again, dead flesh. I've found this is a very useful colour actually. I'm doing much the same thing with as I did with the XV88, but I'm starting much higher up the spikes, and I'm being much more careful with the lining. I'm trying to actually start to add a few very faint lines to the paintwork of the tusks. So at this point, obviously, I've started to really glue the model together now, and I'm doing the highlighting on the corners of the of all the detail work with Fire Dragon Bright. Now, Fire Dragon Bright is a GW version as well. That's what they use on their edge highlights, and it actually worked really well on this particular colour scheme. So I followed a GW manual for this one, and it really worked out well for me on that. So I'm just tidying things up on the tyres, and that is using Incubi Darkness as a edge highlight for the tyres, just to add a little bit of life to them. Now, I didn't go over the top because obviously I've got to make sure I can glue the model down before I can do anything over, particularly flashy on those. So now I've got a absolutely knackered brush, and I've just moistened it down. This is a brush what I've used for all kinds of things. You probably see me use it for some other weathering, and very gently I'm peeling the upper layers of paint off the model to reveal the rust effects underneath, and what you get is a very cool sort of three-dimensional look from the actual paint being removed. And you just go in in any area what you feel would be natural, and you get a really nice model with all the rust showing. And you do need to be gentle with this. It's really cool though when you start seeing the colours come through. So once I've got that down, I'm using light rust, and Fire Dragon Bright on the highlights of the rust itself. Now I do this slightly wrong. I'm not gonna tell you I didn't. What I should have done was painted into the rust sections itself, but it's been a while since I've done this system, so I just quite simply forgot. I'm going to use a dark rust for the sections, for a sort of a shaded section from the top, and what you get is a sort of a three-dimensional look to the model, and you really start to get a lot of interesting detail on there, making it look really, really cool. But again, you need to overlap the paint onto the rust as well as onto the paint colours itself, so you get that sort of mix between the two. After that, it is some AK Interactive Streak and Grime. I've just got the darkest one we possess, and just start to throw it all over. Build up them layers nice and thin. A couple of good layers of it in the areas where you think would be most relevant. Maybe throw some into the engine as well, just to really make everything come to life. And I'm using that same old brush with some white spirits now, just to clear up some of the streak and grime, and make the streaks look much more diffused, much more natural, rather than just a line of paint from a brush. You're using the white spirits to spread the streak and grime into itself. That sort of diffuses these hard lines what you get. So on to the final stages now. I'm just throwing a bit of burnt umber onto the engine exhaust, and just to make them look that bit warmer, as if it's driving. I'm going just on the top edges of it, sorry, the extreme outside edges of it. I'm going from top and bottom, so you get a unified colour. And I'm just adding a bit of more vibrancy to the engines. Once I've gone down with that, it's very, very thin black. I'm just using that to add a bit of depth to the burnt umber. Really makes the thing look a bit dirtier. Could throw some into the engine sections as well, just to really add some life to the model itself. And finally, it is Macragge Blue right onto the extreme edges of the engine section, the exhaust sections, and that just makes them look really, really hot. And you get a very, very cool effect from this. Now, as I said, you can do this by hand. It's just a bit easier with an airbrush, and it's a lot quicker. But you don't need a lot of the colour. You just want it to be bright towards the outside edges. And there you are. So there's an auto vehicle after the matte varnish and an oil wash. Obviously I've done a few hazard stripes just to break up some of that red on the top. Made it look like it's got some hand painted go faster stripes and such. I'd like to change some of the piping. I think I could have broken the metalwork up a little bit better, maybe thrown a bit some more different colours around the canopy, etc. But overall I think it looks pretty cool. So thank yous. I would like to thank our Patreons as always, which is Joe Spearpoint, Rob Pates Models, Warren Brunson and Ludwig Hofbauer. Thank you for your support, guys. You are absolutely awesome, and we cannot thank you enough for it. If you want to see more of our content, you want to see other tutorials and sort of things what we get up to, please hit like, hit subscribe, share with your friends. Every little helps. We've got links to our affiliates, which is the Outpost in Sheffield. So if you want cheap extra models, check them out, as they give you sort of second-hand prices for brand new figures. And after that, I can only say thank you for watching, guys, and we shall catch you in the next one. So take care and have a good day. Bye bye.